The Elimination Chamber pay-per-view is this weekend, and it's got quite a history, not just the pay-per-view itself, but the match itself. This is this weekend in 2025, the 15th Elimination Chamber pay-per-view event. It started in 2010 as a standalone event. It can technically go back to 2008 as No Way Out 2008 and No Way Out 2009 both featured Elimination Chambers on the card, and I think they both featured 2 Elimination Chambers in what we're used to, but it was branded No Way Out back then. I prefer that name. I wish it stuck that whole time because it makes it so that we could have a pay-per-view without the Elimination Chamber eventually, like we did this year with Bad Blood, and how Bad Blood didn't call itself Hell in a Cell, which meant we could have Hell in a Cell, but if we didn't, we didn't. Perfectly fine. So technically this pay-per-view in this theory goes back to No Way Out 2008, but it was rebranded officially to Elimination Chamber in 2010. So it is the 15th under that name. Now you wonder why it's the 15th and not the 16th, because 2010 is a 0 year, is because in 2016, weirdly enough, there was no Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. Fastlane was your main event. I think it was a triple threat featuring the members of the Shield, with the winner facing Triple H at WrestleMania for the championship, because if you remember the Royal Rumble that year, Triple H won the championship in a winner-take-all scenario, as Roman Reigns was the champion going in. So Fastlane was, and we saw I think that was the first ever Fastlane pay-per-view, but that took place in the Elimination Chamber. And partly, I was reading, is that the reason the 2016 year did not have the Elimination Chamber is because of the chamber itself and the just mass amount of people it takes to set it up, people getting hurt, and all that we've seen, when it comes to just the hassle that is the Elimination Chamber. So in 2016, WWE had kind of an idea to retire it after the 2015 year. And that's why in 2017, when it returned, it looks the way that it looks right now, in that sense of being, the much more family-friendly Elimination Chamber, as you'd say, right? So this is the 15th event. This is, when it comes to Elimination Chamber matches overall, this is this weekend in Toronto will be 35 and 36. So let me ask you quickly, Brandon, what is your favorite Elimination Chamber, and what are some of your favorite members? Maybe not just pay-per-view, but the match itself, because we've seen it outside of this pay-per-view.
Well, I think I'll start with there's
can't pick the first. Can't pick 2002. That's cop out.
Oh, come on. That was the one I was going to go with because here's the thing. The reason why I was going to go with that is if that match fell flat, we're not talking about this match today because WWE's done things in the past where they've had these type of gimmicky matches, and if they're good, you're going to see them again. If they're not good, you're probably not going to see them again ever or anytime soon. So, to me, that's why I had to go with the match that you just said not to go with, because it was the first. It also was Shawn Michaels' first championship since his return. So that was the first heavyweight championship. That's cool. I had a who's who. RVD was on there. Triple H was the going in as champion. Y2J, Chris Jericho, Booker T, Kane, obviously Shawn Michaels. It was a who's who of competitors. And I just remember, for me, RVD's just doing crazy spots. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was the match where Triple H got hurt. I think they hurt his throat in that match, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, from RVD dropping the knee down on him from up top.
Yep. So Kane also did his thing. Booker had some fun. It was, to me, that was number one. But since you're not gonna let me use that one, I'm gonna have to go with. Oh gosh, I'm thinking about. You know what? Let's go 2017. And here's the reason why.
That was one of the ones I was gonna pick, and for the reason you're probably about to mention.
Well, maybe the reason, but. You know what? I'm taking it because you wouldn't let me use the other one. So I guess that's fair in this case. So Elimination Chamber 2017, John Cena was in that match. AJ Styles was in that match. Dean Ambrose was in that match, now known as Jon Moxley and over in AEW. The late legend Bray Wyatt was in that match. Baron Corbin, who is now doing independence. I think we recently saw him at GCW. He's doing some things. And The Miz was in this match as well. And it was for the WWE Championship. And to me, it was a good match. It was 30 minutes.
I'm picking that match because that's Bray Wyatt's first championship. He won the championship that night, right? And he headed into WrestleMania as champion. And that was kind of an underdog story because normally, WrestleMania season, we've got things pretty laid out, right? So to have kind of, a new champion crowned on the road is pretty cool, and it to be his first.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, because I mean, obviously, the late great Bray Wyatt, obviously he's no longer, with us, unfortunately, and highlighting that, like that was a great moment for him. Also, is another like a smaller side note, I guess we can put in there, is I believe it was John Cena's final reign as world champ.
Yeah, yeah, because he went in, though that was going into WrestleMania 33, right? And then John Cena had that tag match with Nikki Bella. 35, 34, he had the Undertaker match. 35, he just did the segment, I think, with Elias. 36, he went in against, the COVID WrestleMania with Bray Wyatt there, and then, later on he was either not at WrestleMania or I think he took on Austin Theory for the U.S. belt. So yes, you're very welcome. I think that is the last time John Cena held the WWE
That's
Championship.
my guess, because I feel like he hasn't had a title in almost 10 years. So.
Another good one I'd like to point out that took place in Las Vegas a couple years ago, Roman Reigns in 2018. He defended his championship going into New Orleans, and he beat Braun Strowman, Elias, Finn Balor, John Cena in that match, right? Because that was John Cena's last, remember, because John Cena was doing the Shawn Michaels gimmick where he's trying to get to WrestleMania, and he doesn't know how to get there, and he was trying to win the Elimination Chamber to get to WrestleMania, and then he failed. So he had to straight call out The Undertaker for a match at WrestleMania. So it was like John Cena at the end of his career trying to get on the card, but he didn't have a path. So it was that whole like Shawn Michaels won the match versus The Undertaker back a couple years ago, and he wouldn't give it to him. So he had to, and that was also a chamber moment. That was 2009 when he came out. And was that 2010 maybe 2010 I think. Yeah, he came out and had out of the ring, Shawn Michaels, and super kicked The Undertaker, costing him the Elimination Chamber match. Chris Jericho.
I think 09 was Edge.
Yeah, so 2010, Chris Jericho won the Elimination Chamber, but it was him and Undertaker at the end when Shawn Michaels came out, super kicked The Undertaker. He got his one last match. They had the retirement match at WrestleMania. I'm going to pick my favorite Elimination Chamber match. It's the first one I ever saw live. I've only seen 3 live, if you count 1 at this pay-per-view and then 2 at the last Elimination Chamber match I went to in 2023 in Montreal, and that was in Albany, New York. Who could even know that the Elimination Chamber could fit in the then-known Pepsi Arena in Albany, New York? Because I will say one thing about the Elimination Chamber is it actually doesn't fit in every arena. That's a notable thing as well. And it fit in that arena in Albany, New York. And John Cena, he won against Carlito, Chris Masters, Kane, Kurt Angle, and Shawn Michaels. But what's most notable is the end of the match saw the very first ever cash-in of a Money in the Bank when Edge cashed in Money in the Bank. And it was an awesome night because I get to see the Elimination Chamber for the first time. It's only the 4th Elimination Chamber match ever. And then to see the first ever cash-in, which was awesome. And the funny thing is the next Elimination Chamber match that ever took place, not at one of the pay-per-views we're familiar with, the final one to not be at either a No Way Out or / Elimination Chamber was probably the worst, and that's the Hardcore Elimination Chamber ECW Extreme one where Bobby Lashley did retain the title against a bunch of non-ECW people, and Bobby Lashley being very much a not ECW person in what's one of the worst bought pay-per-views in WWE history. And then it essentially went away from 06 until 08 when it returned in the form that we're talking about now, where it's essentially a staple pay-per-view. Some quick statistics. Triple H holds the record. He has the most wins in the Elimination Chamber. He has 4. Daniel Bryan has 3, and John Cena has 3. So a win for John Cena this weekend would tie him for the most Elimination Chamber wins ever. The most appearances from a men's Elimination Chamber is a guy who has a lot of records. Randy Orton, right? He's somebody who has a lot of these longevity records, but another guy who's right behind him is another one of these people with longevity records, despite the fact that he hasn't been in the company. Chris Jericho.
Oh, Chris Jericho, okay.
8 appearances, and John Cena with 7 appearances below that. And most Elimination Chamber eliminations is Chris Jericho. He has 10. So he's got a lot of Royal Rumble longevity records and elimination records, and he's got the record for most eliminations in the Elimination Chamber. He has eliminated 10. And I did actually see one fun statistic. I think it was most eliminations but no wins. I think that's The Miz. I'm pulling that up right here. But yes, most eliminations but no wins, and that's Braun Strowman. He's got 5. 5 eliminations, no wins. Sheamus, 5 eliminations,
that's on brand.
No wins.
That's on brand for Braun Strowman. He's going to be a destroyer but not win.
Yes, Goldberg's got 3 Elimination Chambers because don't forget, sandwiched way back in the beginning days, the second ever Elimination Chamber was at SummerSlam 2003. So the first one was Survivor Series, second one was SummerSlam 2003, a year later. The next one was the 2005 New Year's Revolution, then the 2006 New Year's Revolution. It kind of seemed like we were going to have a New Year's Revolution Elimination Chamber theme going for a while, with that being the pay-per-view and the match to go with it. Then New Year's Revolution the next year did not have the chamber, and they had the Extreme Chamber instead, and that's when the chamber died for a little while. So those are some statistics. Now with the women's side, obviously a lot less. The most eliminations is Shayna Baszler. She did that the year she won. We forget about that because that led into her match against Becky Lynch during COVID WrestleMania. Probably would have got a little more attention, and it was at the time in 2020. But I think that's when the Elimination Chamber was in like later March. Because there was, I think, 2 pay-per-views that year, because there was a Saudi pay-per-view and then the Elimination Chamber, which literally was a week or 2 before everything shut down. So Shayna Baszler won the Elimination Chamber like in one of the last events in front of crowds for almost 2 years for WWE. But so her 5 Elimination Chambers in her win kind of gets lost. And when it comes to appearances, nobody has more than 1 appearance in the Elimination Chamber. Bianca Belair and Alexa Bliss and Bayley will all be setting records this weekend for their second appearances, which will be the most for the women. So the Elimination Chamber, quite an interesting history, right? We got a ton of events, 15 pay-per-views, with 2016 not having it, as they rebranded it from the, I like to call it Pussified Chamber. That's the I guess incorrect way to say that, but the Pussified Chamber, right? Because it used to be so much more imposing. Last year we had to see it shipped over to Australia via like a ship over the Pacific Ocean, like a month in advance. This will be the first Elimination Chamber in a stadium since they were in Saudi Arabia a couple years ago. The last time the Elimination Chamber has been in America has been probably that 2000, probably the COVID one, obviously. But before that was in Philadelphia in 2020. And then 2021 was in the Thunderdome. And then 2022 was in Saudi Arabia, 23 Montreal, 24 Australia, 25 Toronto. So it hasn't been in America since before COVID. So that's an interesting factoid right there. They seem to like Elimination Chamber outside of America. But one country they're not going to be going to with it, and we've talked about this before, is Germany. And one quick thing, I guess I wonder. I know the pay-per-view is rebranded as No Escape in Germany. I wonder, it's kind of weird to me because you knew that was the case. But WWE, I guess, I wonder why WWE decided, like, hey, maybe we should just not call it that so everybody can share the same name. Or, they're just like, nah, they're going to have their own name for it, and we're going to keep going on as we do. So one country has their own name for this pay-per-view due to its, I guess, past, and the word chamber being obviously something that they look back in time. And it's weird because Germany's a very progressive country. It's a very normal country like anywhere else. And it's just weird because I can't think of another example in America where like a word that is used elsewhere is curse words here.
Not to go obviously down that rabbit hole of history, but obviously it was one of the most, probably the most gruesome thing to ever happen. So
yeah, we don't have anything in America where every other country is allowed to because to be honest, people may not realize it, but in Germany history is taught differently there, and it's taught, but it is literally, I would say it's like the equivalent of saying the N word here, right, in America, where it is it is known, it is taught, but it is off limits. It is something that is cursing. It is hate speech. If you here in America, we have free speech, and some people fly swastikas, and we've seen them before, and it's hated upon, it's disliked. But there, it's like a criminal offense. It's a severe criminal offense there. So, like I said, even calling this pay-per-view the Elimination Chamber is an offense there. That's just not, you can't do that. So it's called No Escape. But one quick question I guess I have is that we know the pay-per-view is called No Escape, and that's fine. That makes sense. But is I guess, I don't know the translation, but is that how they call the match as well? Is it the No Escape match? Because Elimination Chamber is the name of a match. So No Escape sounds kind of strange for the title for a specific match. So I guess we have any German listeners out there, kind of how that translates to what it's called. I know the pay-per-view is called No Escape, and if that's the match name as well. But obviously with different dialects, different countries, some things, translate much differently. So Elimination Chamber, a lot of weird statistics, a lot of weird facts. And like we said in our first segment, right, the first pay-per-view without a championship match since 2026 will be Since 1996, it will be the Elimination Chamber. So Elimination Chamber, a lot of history, as it's now synonymously the final stop on the road to WrestleMania. One final thing: would you be okay, similar to what Bad Blood did, if we retired the Elimination Chamber name of a pay-per-view, which essentially rebranded it to No Way Out, so that in future years this pay-per-view could or could not be Elimination Chamber, depending on if the stories fit it?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think No Way Out's a great name, anyways. I think it's a great name for a pay-per-view. So yeah, I think doing it under that umbrella, I think would be a really good idea.
And it kind of fits too, because next year maybe they could have Hell in a Cell, they could have a cage match, they could have Elimination Chamber, because No Way Out kind of assembles like getting out of something, but it doesn't specify this particular match. But either way, Elimination Chamber, a lot of history in that pay-per-view and in the match itself.